Hey you guys, it's MJ from All to Love. How are you? I want to talk about our soul's call versus fear's judgment, and how ultimately the soul's call is what we refer to as the intuition, that higher self, this broader, more expanded part of ourselves that really does believe in us, believes in our ability to shine and make happen our dreams, make manifest the dreams of the heart's call. And the heart's call really is that ever fluid and emotion soul, that energy essence that we are. And how this is a different portal experience from fear's judgment. And fear's judgment is any time that we're sort of deflecting the present moment, or trying to deny the present moment, or trying to slam it down. And fear is always coming from a place of denial of the unity of existence, and a belief that there is and ever will be and anything outside of you to be frightened of. Hence, fear and judgment go hand in hand. Judgment is only born of separation. And yet, because we're so deep in it, we're so deep in the fear and deep in judgment, that it's it's almost like a perpetual loop, that we perpetually try to deny it. We perpetually try to quiet in it. We perpetually try to pretend like it's not there, like we're not feeling something uncomfortable, like we're not facing something uncomfortable, like we're not like we're not here now where we are, that something or someone, that things happening around us are not a reflection of who we are, that we just want to quiet it down, we want to make it go away, we want to judge it as a negative or bad experience that has nothing to do with our own vibrational frequency. And that's ultimately fear's judgment. In the book, judgment is the block to bliss, because anything that we're not facing as a part of ourselves that we deem outside of us is actually something looping back to show us something about ourselves. And hence, in a way, you could say the fear's judgment totally goes hand in hand with the calling of our soul. That we can keep looping a situation back and back and back until we finally go, hold on, that's mine, I'm doing that, I'm creating this situation, something in me. And thus, everything around us that we experience is a reflection of the soul's calling. And how we continue to up-level ourselves, transform the shittier patterns, the more uncomfortable patterns, is by totally being present with what is and saying, I am that. To not try to quieten it down, to not try to shut it up, to not try to make it go away, or to not try to blame it for how we're feeling, but to just be present with the feelings that we're feeling. And in a weird way, it's something that I find so fascinating at this point in the journey. It's that the mass denial and shame around the emotions that we feel, in particular the negative ones, are really part and parcel of this really kind of frightening world that we've created. Perpetual war cycling, perpetual fear mongering. It's that we are not owning the power that we are, and so we distort the power into this fearful world. People have a really difficult time often just being present with another person's anger, and yet the way I've dealt with a lot of my own anger, as in the way I've been able to accept my own anger, is that if I don't allow myself to feel it, one, I can't root out what's underneath it. And more here now in the presence, I'm very aware that how people interpret us is very much about their own unconscious reactivity or unconscious programming, because people are often like, whoa, 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 you're being really angry. And the very weird paradoxical thing in my awareness is that I'm not feeling anger the way I normally feel anger. I'm just expressing a story, right? And then they're like, you're being all angry, and I'm like, well, I don't feel really anger. I'm just like, I'm retelling a story with some dynamism, with some like, yeah, some memory of that feeling, of that story and how it went down. But I'm not attached to the anger as myself or other. It's just a story. And yet how we're in ourselves reacting and feedbacking off of the external reality is often telling us where we're not owning our fear, where we're not owning our judgment. And then if we can really be honest with ourselves, we can actually integrate that unified field. We can be as present as possible with the other energy and just unify and merge it into one and accept that whatever this person reflecting me is going through is a part of my own soul's call. But to not, or at least be really aware of where the energy of our words are coming from. And again, this comes from that a lot of inner deduction, a lot of inner work of always taking responsibility, always looking at self. And the biggest shift for a lot of us as empaths is that we're now breaking free from the relationships of and with people who don't ever look at themselves, who are just in perpetual blame and attack cycles of them being a victim and vilifying everyone and everything around them. And so as an empath, it means that as we head or continue to build momentum in this empowerment journey, in this freedom, in this sovereignty, it becomes totally futile to stay in patterns where someone keeps projecting their unconscious onto you and are never owning their responsibility in that situation, because that is abuse, that is self-abuse. If I'm owning it all, I can't own it for everybody else. And if people perpetually want you to keep, well, just be nice, or just be this, or just be less loud, or da da da, then that's stuff to do with that's stuff to do with unconscious, unresolved aspects of that soul's call. And again, for this next level of like rising empathic awareness and rising sensitivities in the human collective energy field, it's our own responsibility to be responsible for our own emotions and our own. And if we're telling someone else how they feel or what they do or da 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 da, then that's not necessarily in our placement. And yet, depending on where we are in our life, that might be part of our function. Part of our function might just be in the person that we are to trigger other people. It might be that the person that we are is here to unlock certain gifts and certain portals in other, and yet we have to really be able to stand in our integrity. And if we are someone standing in our integrity, being true to who we are, then we can keep reflecting back the untruth in other. And yet we have to remain pretty detached about this as a process, because it's uncomfortable, and because often in those moments of discomfort, we just want to push back. We want to push it back onto the other person, because I don't want to be culpable. I don't want to be responsible, ultimately for my own existence, ultimately for my own life. And this is where this stuff gets really deep. It just is. It just is very deep and very profound. And it requires pretty much every single one of us to just put our hands up and say, we've been in the darkness. We've lived in the dark ages. We've been blind. All of us have those aspects of shades and darkness. We can all put our hands up. I'm just aware that in my own soul's call, I've been putting my hands up all my life and going, I'm wrong, like I'm bad. I'll take responsibility for that. That's okay. Don't worry. I'll bear the burden of all this stuff, where it's like this title shift, this title turn is going, whoa, 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 whoa. Actually, I cannot. Me taking on the burden that's not mine isn't serving the mass anymore, isn't serving the collective anymore. And so this freedom break that I talked about in yesterday's share is like a bunch of us as empaths suddenly going, no, I can't tolerate you dumping on me. I can't tolerate you disowning something you're feeling, and yet again making it my problem, my fault, making me wrong for essentially being me, for essentially being the person I am. I know who I am because I've been doing all this inner work for years and years and years, and I've been owning circumstantial reality for years and years and years, and giving of self from a place of unity perspective, and watching and observing people either show up or fall by the wayside based on their own vibrational set point and based on the inner work that they're owning and doing within themselves. Ultimately, the people who have come into my life and then left my life are people who aren't owning their own shame, owning their own guilt, owning their own emotions, and still just want someone like me to turn up and make their world a shiny, happy place and make their existence happier or better. Or we find a boyfriend, or we find a girlfriend, or we find someone or something to just make it temporarily feel better. But then what happens when those emotions resurface? What happens when we still have to address underlying issues, underlying feelings underlying desires, we have to address them all if we want to make them manifest, and or we want to dissolve them, transform them. We can't transform a fear if we're not putting it out into our emotional field. We're not addressing it. We're just denying it. And that's what fear's judgment would have us do. It would have us completely deny our ability to own everything and then put it out there. The emotional field is ultimately what allows us to integrate all this stuff, but pardon me, we have a systematic generational, and what I mean by that is like multi-generational, so not just one generation but multiple generations, 6, 7, 14, I don't know, long time in a historical context. So we take that past projection and we want to unify it into the here now presence. We have a lot of emotions to uncover because systematically everyone's been taught to banish their emotions and believe that I think therefore I am. So the mental process, that male dominant, which is an energetic stream, it disempowered, just like we would have the feminine dominant is also a vindictive, controlling, dark, and succubus kind of energy as well. So the male dominant, when we're looking at male and female polarities in an unconscious, in a low level perspective, it's all insidious. It's all in there to just entrap us into patterns and make us go over things and make us think we're not powerful and make us think we're horrible and make us think all of these emotions are bad. And yet the intuitive knowing and a process and a chemical experiential transformational process from within the self that I am has showed me that it's only via the emotional field that I can access my true divinity and thus transform the emotional blocks that I've been in denial of, all of my power, all of my fear, all of my disparity. And it's amazing to me how unless you really align with it and resonate with it and are empathic and thus have been doing the work for most of your life, it's very difficult to communicate with somebody who's unwilling to bend and unwilling to own their own shit, because most people, it's just too painful, and they've been so locked into telling a story of I'm this wonderful person, or I'm so spiritual, or I'm pure love and light, or I'm this or I'm that, that when it comes up, when that emotional stuff comes up, we just want to go, fuck you, you're a bitch, leave me alone, boom, and then we're done. We don't want to go deeper. We don't want to uncover the jealousy, the resentment, the fear, the stress, the burden, the whatever family, social harbor trauma or trauma that we're harboring. That's what we tend to want to deflect and just go, whoa, you're just talking too much, or you're just, anytime we're externally deflecting it, it's a distortion on some level. And that is something which is increasingly interesting to me, kind of fascinating to me, is that now I'm sort of flipping it all, because everything that I say and everything that I express is my own, because I own and integrate everything that I experience, and even upon reflection. So in the present here now moment, if someone's deflecting or hitting a feedback form off of me, I can own that. At the same time, I can't own the deeper intentional energy coming from another human being. That's for me to root out. And if there's a block in communication, it's usually because there's an energetic block and disparity in an emotional field. And I'll continue to outwork that from within myself. But what's becoming so obvious to me is that we just can't do the work for other. And the more as empaths we rise into unity fields and Christ and beauty and consciousness in that level, the less we want to tolerate people not owning their shit and just wanting someone else to make it happen for them, or making these sort of let's just agree to disagree kind of sweeping statements. It's like, well, that's kind of a cop-out, because that's saying that secretly I'm right and I can't be bothered to root out the underlying lack of unity within this exchange. So I just want to keep on this level, and then we operate. And then from my awareness of the global paradigm shift, we have to uproot it. We kind of have to feel it out, and at the same time be aware that the uprooting it from within self is the uprooting within all. So we're really getting much closer to having these sort of energetic battles, you could say, that are helping us to unlock deeper wounds. And for me, I could honestly say that even recently, it's more about the fact that I'm being given an opportunity, and or I'm giving myself the opportunity to really heal some of the closures, some of the karmic patternings and stuff like that that have happened, one over the entire lifetime and multiple lifetimes, and then just within this last year or two, of looking at all of the unconscious that's flown out of and presented itself in the reality and the pain and the darkness and the betrayal, and really own it as my own. And at the same time, it would appear that I'm inviting back situations that are allowing me to review it and then go, yeah, I'm so fucking over that. You know, I'm so fucking over being wrong, being bad, being around people that just want to shut me up and don't want to appreciate me and blah, 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 blah. Where it's my shame, it's my guilt, it's my fear, it's my issue, right? And and at the same time, there's this like polarity of getting kind of tired of talking about it all, right? Getting kind of like, oh yeah, all that crazy shit happened. It's only January 6th, but how awesome is that? That we're not, or for myself, I'm not going to carry 2018 with me, but I'm also going to have to own whatever the residue trauma that's coming up in the here now presence. I just have to own that here now and go, yep, this has been my patterning. This has been my victimhood consciousness. This has been, and then straight up, if there's victimhood consciousness, there's villain consciousness as well. There's like that polarity of always being made wrong and bad, and you're going, I'm not a villain, but I'm not a victim. I'm just the me that I am. And the more I surround myself with that integrity, with that open field, with that ownership presence, the more those clear exchanges continue to rebound and then ultimately shine where that's not true in other dynamics. And then it will just be a continual unfolding of whether or not that is the divine choice of my soul, and actually being quite detached when it comes to other humans' choices. Although most of us at this point, I would say, have an awareness. We have already a vibrational awareness of energies in our vortex, people that align with us and people that don't, people that might be going with us into this next phase of expansion and growth and building, people that, even people that might not be around physically, they're still a part of new paradigm. And this is where unified or unity consciousness is such an inner grounding and anchoring for me. And because I can feel the split more with greater clarity within one's field of energy. So you can see where someone's still fractaled. You can see where someone's still denouncing their power and putting it outside of themselves. And there's the love to contain it within all of love, because the more refined tunnel vision focus is only wanting to see everyone in their unity space. So there's a continual unfolding of staying in the soul's purpose call and just shining light for the fear of judgment. And it will just continue to be released. It's just that one thing I'm aware of as an empath, if someone is in a very deep pattern of denial of their own emotional field, they continue to project it out. And then we're perpetually emotional. So the empath is always the one going emotionally crazy or having all of these reactions and da 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 da. At some point on the empath path, you have to recognize, wait a minute, is this all mine? If it's not inherent to my daily like fluctuations and feelings, then it's definitely got to do with somebody that I'm allowing into my field who may or may not be responsible. And if they're not responsible for integrating and owning and transforming and feeling their field, they're just going to dump on you. They're going to put it onto you. And so that's, for me, something I'm seeing back to myself, is that that's my responsibility. If I'm going to hang out with unconscious and or irresponsible creators, people who are still leaning on other people or making it other people's fault, versus full ownership creators, right? And then basically being aware that we're always feedbacking off of that and kind of allowing what we allow into our reality. I think that's it for today, you guys. It's been a really interesting start to the year. That's for shizzle and nizzles. I hope this top wasn't too distracting. I'm very aware of like the cleavage suddenly. I'm like, oh there. at the same time, it's quite a pretty top, so I don't care. It's fine. I love you guys loads. Have an awesome day. I hope that that was useful to you. Feel free to subscribe, share these videos around, or just share the Ulta Love vibrashe by heading to ultalove.com to subscribe. And just generally love the shit out of yourself. That's my biggest offer to all of you. Love yourself, because that will just transform everything. It's not squeaky butterscotch and rainbows necessarily. Loving yourself is a very profound transformational endeavor, because the world would have us tell us that we're these horrible, horrible beings, and it's actually the opposite. We're very powerful, being programmed into these dark webs, and yet we want to kind of lift ourselves out of that. Unplug, break free, endeavor to figure out who you are from within your own loving capacity. Love will show you the way. The truth shall set you free, and to thine own self be true, because that's really all there is the self that you're perceiving through the window of your soul. So have an awesome day, you guys. Love you loads. Speak to you soon, and feel free to reach out. Of course, go to Ulta Love if you want to book a session with me. And remember that the price point is a guide for all y'all, but I will never deny sessions. If you can only afford £20, £50, I'm happy to take sessions with you. If you can afford the full rate, I really appreciate that as well. It's a guide. So I love you all. Have an awesome day. Peace, peace, peace. Namaste, mo flow, lover. Mo flow, lover.